I woke up to the sound of people laughing, music playing, and this strong wave of fresh flowers in the air. And that was strange, considering I hadn't invited a soul over. Still groggy, I rubbed my eyes and squinted out the window, expecting to see maybe a neighbor's party. But no. What I saw made my stomach drop. My yard, the land I've worked on for years, had been hijacked and turned into a full-blown wedding venue, overnight. Perfect rows of white chairs stretched across my lawn, all leading up to this over-the-top floral arch like something out of a bridal magazine. Off to the side near my barn, a catering setup was already in full swing. Chefs in spotless white jackets were plating hors d'oeuvres like they owned the place. A string quartet was playing soft classical music near the pond, like we were in some luxury vineyard in Willow Bend, not my damn backyard. And right in the center of it all, shouting orders like she was directing a royal parade, was Karen, the nightmare in yoga pants, who ran the HOA like it was her personal empire. My boots crunched over the gravel as I stormed outside, heart racing, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Maybe this was a mix-up. Maybe some clueless wedding planner sent everyone to the wrong address. But as I got closer, I spotted a giant banner strung between two trees. Welcome to the wedding of Emily and Zach. I didn't know a single person named Emily or Zach. Not one. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't some accident. This was Karen's latest power trip, HOA style. She turned just as I reached the front row of chairs, plastering on this sickly sweet smile, like we were best friends and she hadn't just stolen my land. "Oh, good morning, Ben," she chirped, waving a clipboard like it made her official. "Isn't it just stunning? The whole community's gonna love it." I just stared at her, completely floored. "Karen, what the hell is going on here?" She laughed this fake airy giggle that made my blood boil. "Don't be so dramatic. It's just a small wedding. We needed a gorgeous outdoor spot and yours was perfect. You should feel flattered. The bride's family is very influential." I had to take a breath before I said something I'd regret. "Karen, this is my property. You can't just throw a wedding here without asking me." She rolled her eyes like I was a toddler having a tantrum. "Ben, relax. It's for the good of the community. And besides, we tried calling. You never answered." "Because no one ever called me," I snapped. "You don't get to steal someone's yard and act like it's a favor." Karen started flipping through her clipboard, like it held the Constitution. "Well, according to HOA regulations, community events are allowed in suitable areas." I crossed my arms. "For the last time. I'm not even in the damn HOA." End quote. She waved a hand like she was brushing off a fly. "Details, Ben. You live here, don't you? That means you should pitch in. It's just one day. Don't make a scene." Before I could argue, the bride and groom came over, smiling like they were meeting their favorite celebrity. The bride, dressed to perfection with her blonde hair curled just right, beamed at me. "Oh, you must be Ben. Thank you so much for letting us use your land. It's just magical." I gritted my teeth. "I didn't let you use anything. Karen set this up behind my back." The groom, some slick guy in a suit that probably cost more than my truck, gave me this smug chuckle. "Aw, come on, man. No harm, right? It's just for today. Everything's already paid for, and the guests are on their way." I dragged a hand down my face, trying not to explode. "Paid? Paid who?" Karen jumped in like she couldn't wait to brag. "To the HOA, naturally. It was a very reasonable fee, if I do say so." I just stared at her, trying to wrap my head around it all. She hadn't just hijacked my land. She'd actually made money off of it? My property, my driveway. And she was acting like she deserved a pat on the back? "Oh, and one more thing," Karen added, flipping another page. "The catering trucks had a hard time parking, so we had them use your driveway. Hope that's okay?" I turned and saw it. My driveway packed with vans, trucks, and even a limousine. There was no way I could get my truck out if I wanted to. I felt something twist in my gut. Enough was enough. I stepped closer, lowered my voice so only Karen could hear. "Move them, all of them. Now, Karen let out a dramatic sigh. Ben, you're being unreasonable. The ceremony starts in less than 30 minutes. Just go back inside and enjoy the show. My jaw tightened so hard it ached. My land was overrun. My driveway blocked. Strangers were walking all over my yard like it was theirs. Karen had literally sold access to my home and told me to be grateful. And now, I was supposed to smile and play along while a bunch of freeloaders had the time of their lives? Absolutely not. Karen had already turned her back, basking in attention, acting like the queen of suburbia as more guests arrived. The happy couple had gone off to do more photos or rehearsals or whatever people do when they're trespassing with tuxedos. I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone. Hey, I said when my farmhand picked up. Open the back gate and let them out. There was a pause. All of them? I glanced at Karen, who was now schmoozing with a group of HOA minions like she was running for office. Every single one. The farmhand laughed. Got it, boss. I slid the phone back in my pocket and wandered over to the buffet like I didn't have a care in the world, casually plucking a shrimp skewer from the tray. If they wanted a wedding on a farm, well, they were about to get one they'd never forget. I stood there, chewing slowly, watching Karen work the crowd like she was Miss HOA America. She shook hands, faked a few laughs, and strutted around like the grass was hers to sell. The bride and groom were busy with final touches, completely ignoring the fact they were standing on someone else's property like it was a rented venue. Then my eyes drifted to the barn, and I smiled. He already knew what was about to unfold, and just the thought of it sent a jolt of satisfaction through me. Karen and her fancy little guests were blissfully clueless that their picture-perfect celebration was seconds away from turning into utter mayhem. The first crack in their dream day came when the caterers near the barn froze like statues. One guy in a black cap and chef's coat pointed toward the open back gate, eyes wide as dinner plates. Then it hit. The deep, low bellow of a cow echoed across the lawn, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy hooves pounding against the grass. I took another bite of shrimp, cool as ever. Showtime. A herd of cows thundered through the gate, their big bodies moving faster than anyone would expect from animals that size. Some ambled in like it was just another day, casually chewing hay. Others looked thrilled to be free. But the real star? Tank, the rowdiest bull on the farm, already charging straight toward the towering wedding cake like it had personally offended him. Everything fell apart in an instant. Guests screamed as cows tore through the rows of chairs, flipping them like dominoes and sending those over-the-top flower arrangements flying. The bride let out a high-pitched shriek right as Tank slammed into the cake, turning it into a mound of frosting, splinters, and crushed dreams. The groom managed to leap backward just in time to avoid a full splatter, but his crisp white suit didn't stand a chance against the dirt flying everywhere. Karen's face went through a whole slideshow, confused, then horrified, and finally, downright furious. She spun toward me, her voice shrill enough to cut glass. "What did you do?" I wiped my mouth with a napkin and casually tossed the empty skewer into what used to be the cake. Looks like my cows weren't invited. Guess they decided to come crash the party. Karen's jaw flapped open, then shut, then open again, like she couldn't decide what to say first. She turned back to the absolute mess unraveling all around her. A bunch of older guests were scrambling for the exit. But one of the cows had plopped down right by the gate, effectively blocking their escape like a living roadblock. Some poor guy stepped right into a steaming pile of manure, completely wrecking his designer shoes. Then, as if things weren't insane enough, out came the goats, smaller, faster, and 100 times more chaotic. They bolted around like they'd just chugged espresso. One goat leapt onto the gift table, sending boxes and boughs flying like confetti. Another climbed onto the DJ booth, and within seconds its tiny hooves were smashing buttons, turning the classical string music into a warped nightmare of screeches and static. And just when they thought it couldn't get worse, the goose arrived. My prize troublemaker, Captain Beaks, a big, angry white goose with attitude for days, took one look at the chaos and decided he was in charge now. With one loud, aggressive honk, he flared his wings and charged like a feathered linebacker, heading straight for the groom. The guy yelped like he'd been tased as Captain Beaks latched onto his leg, flapping like his life depended on it. The bride tried to pry the goose off him, but that only ticked honkers off more. Now it was personal. I leaned on the buffet table, like I was watching the season finale of some wild TV show. Karen, face bright red and trembling with rage, turned back toward me. "You did this on purpose. Call them off." I shrugged. "They live here. You don't. Looks like you're the ones trespassing." By now, full-blown panic had set in. Some guests climbed on chairs to escape the stampede. A group of bridesmaids huddled behind the catering table, eyes wide, watching one goat chew on the hem of their dresses like it was salad. One older guy was locked in a standoff with Captain Beaks, waving a napkin like it was a sword, trying to scare him off. The bride finally cracked. "My wedding is ruined." The groom, still swatting feathers off himself, shouted, "Who the hell throws a wedding on someone else's land without even asking?" I raised an eyebrow at Karen. Great question. Karen's face drained of color as it finally hit her just how royally she'd screwed up. She clapped her hands together in a pathetic attempt at control. "Everyone, please, let's stay calm. It's just a minor hiccup." That's when the loud crash happened. One of the cows had wandered into the drink station and taken down the whole table. Over 40 champagne flutes shattered. Expensive bubbly soaked into the grass, mixing with mud and what was left of the cake. I took a deep breath, savoring the sweet, sticky scent of karma. Karen snapped, "I'm calling the police." I clapped once, slow and sarcastic. "By all means, can't wait to see how they react to an illegal wedding on someone else's property." She froze. You could practically see the gears turning in her brain, trying to spin this mess into something salvageable. Meanwhile, some of the smarter guests were already making a break for their cars, ducking under flower arches like they were fleeing a war zone. The bride was still bawling, makeup smeared, clutching her bouquet like it was a lifeline. The groom finally broke free from Captain Beaks and turned on Karen, seething. "This was your idea," he hissed, brushing off feathers and glaring. "You told us it was all set." Karen, now visibly unraveling, stammered, "It was taken care of. This wasn't supposed to." "Unbelievable," the groom muttered, turning to me, clearly worn out. "Look, man, I don't know what lies this woman told you, but I swear we had no clue this was off limits. If I'd known, we wouldn't have touched the place." I eyed him for a second. Still a pompous jerk, sure, but at least he had enough sense to admit the truth. Then the bride snapped, voice cracking from sobbing, "Karen, you ruined my wedding." Karen stood there defeated and silent as her little empire crumbled around her. I stretched my arms with a deep, satisfied breath, grabbing another snack off the wrecked buffet table. "Well," I said, popping it into my mouth, "I'd call that a memorable day." Karen glared at me like she wanted to set me on fire, but she didn't say a word, because deep down, she knew. She'd lost. Big time. That was it. The wedding was officially toast. Guests had either bailed or were wandering around trying to clean cake off their shoes or cow droppings off their pants. The once elegant venue Karen had bragged about was now a wreck. Trampled flowers, muddy footprints, animals everywhere, and the stench of crushed dreams hanging thick in the air. I gave the mess one last glance before strolling back toward my house, like I had all the time in the world. Behind me, Captain Beaks let out one last honk of victory, loud and proud, which sent Karen spinning around and screeching like she'd just stepped on a rake. Best wedding ever. There she stood, smack in the middle of the disaster zone, her designer blouse smeared with frosting, her fancy hairstyle puffing out from the humidity, and her reputation barely clinging to life. The picture-perfect ceremony now looked like a livestock riot had rolled through. Chairs were scattered, decorations were crushed, and half-eaten food was everywhere thanks to the cows that had made themselves right at home. The bride was sitting in the grass, sobbing into what was left of her veil, while the groom stomped around nearby, muttering curse words under his breath like a broken record. Some guests were still attempting a quiet getaway. Others just stood frozen, watching it all like survivors of a natural disaster. I leaned against the fence, arms crossed, and watched the whole thing unravel like it was prime entertainment. Karen kept opening her mouth like she had something to say, but nothing came out, just useless air. Her little HOA posse had gathered around her, some whispering behind her back, others flat out glaring now that they saw just how badly she tanked everything. Then came the voice of doom, the bride's mother, who'd spent the past half hour switching between screaming bloody murder and dabbing her daughter's face with a monogrammed handkerchief. "Karen," she snapped, her voice cutting through the silence. "You told us this was all handled, that it was a real venue. You said the owner gave his permission." She screamed that last part so loud a few people actually flinched. Karen's lip trembled as she scrambled for a comeback. Well, it was supposed to be. I just figured Ben wasn't really using the yard for anything, so I thought. That's when the bride's father stepped forward. And let me tell you, the man looked ready to explode. "You were thinking," he snarled. "Do you have any idea how much this wedding cost? We paid the HOA, we paid you, over $10,000. He threw his arm out toward the wreckage, just as a cow tugged down what remained of the wedding arch. The gift table had been flipped over, presents and envelopes buried in the dirt. The DJ's sound system had been absolutely demolished by a goat still standing on the speaker like it had claimed it for the herd. Karen threw her hands up in the air, desperately looking for a scapegoat, figuratively this time. Her eyes landed on me. Her voice went full banshee. "This is your fault. You unleashed your animals on purpose. You ruined this day." I didn't even flinch, just raised a brow and said, "Really? And who gave you the right to hold a wedding on my land to begin with?" The other HOA members all shifted nervously, like the floor had started cracking under their feet. One of them, this older lady with huge glasses, finally spoke up. "Karen, you told us Ben gave the okay. That's the only reason we approved it." I couldn't help but laugh. Dry, sharp. Approve? You don't get to approve jack on my property. I'm not even in the HOA, remember? Karen's mouth opened and shut like a fish flopping on a dock. Her little empire was burning down fast, and she didn't have a hose. The bride, still wiping streaks of mascara from her cheeks, shot daggers at her. "You lied. You lied to all of us." The groom ran a hand down his face, hay falling off his jacket as he sighed loud enough for everyone to hear. "We're getting every cent back, all of it." Karen let out this weird laugh, shrill and shaky like she was 2 seconds from losing it completely. "Well, we'll need to go through the HOA Treasury Department for that." The bride's father stepped up again, eyes narrowed. "You mean the Treasury Department you're in charge of?" Karen looked like someone had punched her with a lawsuit. She gulped, realizing just how far she'd overplayed her hand. People were murmuring now. I heard words like misuse of funds and vote her out floating through the air. It was getting bad for Karen, and it was about to get worse. Right then, like a perfectly timed movie scene, we heard sirens in the distance. Police. Karen spun around, face lighting up like she'd been rescued. "Oh, thank God. Officers, arrest him. Arrest Ben. He let those animals loose on purpose and destroyed everything." 2 cops stepped onto the lawn, boots crunching through debris, eyes taking in the chaos around them. One adjusted his hat while the other flipped open a notepad. "All right, whose property is this?" I raised my hand without moving an inch. "That'd be me." The officer nodded. "And you didn't give permission for this event?" "Not even close." Karen made this strangled, choking sound. "He's lying. He's just trying to stir up trouble." The officer ignored her completely and turned back to me. So, folks paid the HOA to use your property? I nodded, pointing to the steaming bride's parents. Yup, paid Karen directly. He turned to her. Ma'am, did you collect money for an event on land that isn't yours? Karen went pale as drywall. I mean, it wasn't like that. The bride's father whipped out his phone like a weapon. We've got all the receipts. Karen looked like she wanted the earth to open up and swallow her whole. The two officers exchanged a glance. Then one said, Ma'am, we're going to need you to come answer a few questions down at the station. The entire crowd gasped. Karen's eyes went wide. What? No, that's insane. I didn't do anything wrong. I couldn't stop the grin that spread across my face. Oh, Karen, you messed with the wrong farm. Tell that to the judge. That was the last thing I said before the officers started leading Karen, still shrieking and throwing a fit, toward their patrol car. The guests, finally snapping out of their daze, started gathering their things and heading out. Some looked embarrassed. Some looked traumatized. All of them looked ready to pretend this disaster never happened. The bride, makeup smudged and veil in tatters, paused on her way out and glanced back at me. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I gave her a nod, nothing more. Next time, double-check who actually owns the venue before you hand over a check. She let out a tired breath and followed her parents to the car. The groom trailed behind, still looking like he was reconsidering every life choice that had led him to this exact spot. What was left of the HOA board huddled awkwardly near the exit, mumbling something about an emergency meeting. One older guy with a grim look on his face turned to me. We'll, be in touch. I smiled, looking forward to it. The last car finally pulled out of my driveway. The sirens faded into the distance. I stretched my arms out and let out a long, satisfied sigh. Captain Beeks strutted past like a feathered general returning from battle, chest puffed out and wings twitching with pride. I gave him a pat. Good work, soldier. And just like that, I turned back toward my house, already wondering what kind of nonsense the HOA would try next. Whatever it was, I'd be ready. Or so I thought. The next morning, I rolled over expecting peace and quiet. Instead, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. When I finally answered, my farmhand's voice came through, sounding half amused, half fed up. Boss, you might want to check the front yard. You've got company. I groaned, kicked off the blanket, and dragged myself to the window. After what happened yesterday, I figured Karen and her HOA circus would be laying low for a while. Clearly, I gave her too much credit. Out by the fence was an official-looking city vehicle, parked nice and smug. Two guys in button-ups and slacks stood beside it, hands on hips, eyeing my property like it was a crime scene. And standing right next to them, waving a giant folder of papers and yapping away like she was delivering a TED Talk, was Karen. I sighed, pulled on my boots, and headed out. Morning, gentlemen, I said, tipping my hat. Something I can help you with? One of the men gave me a polite nod that felt just a little too official. Mr. Ben, we received several complaints regarding potential code violations on your land. We're here for an inspection. I tried not to roll my eyes into next week. Complaints? From who, Jack? The second guy cleared his throat and glanced sideways at Karen, who suddenly put on her most angelic face. From concerned members of the Homeowners Association, she said sweetly, like she wasn't the same woman who got hauled off by cops 12 hours ago. There are reports that your animals are a disturbance, and we've been told your property may be in violation of local zoning laws. I folded my arms. Zoning laws? That's funny. I've lived and worked this land for years without a single issue, until now. Karen let out a big, dramatic sigh and clutched her folder like it held the Holy Grail. It's not personal, Ben. It's about preserving the community. After yesterday's unfortunate situation, people just want to be sure your land is up to code. I let out a short laugh. So let me get this straight. You trespass, throw a wedding on my property without permission, get arrested for it, and now I'm the one under investigation? Her face twitched, but she powered through it with a fake little smile. We just want to move forward. One of the inspectors looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. We just need to take a look around, Mr. Ben. If everything's in order, we'll be out of your hair. I could have told them to get lost, but I had nothing to hide. And frankly, I was curious just how far Karen was willing to take this grudge. I stepped aside. Knock yourselves out. The two inspectors started walking the property, making notes here and there. Karen trailed behind them, pointing at things like the barn, the troughs, even my compost pile, as if she thought any of it would get me in trouble. But the longer it went on, the more frustrated she got. Eventually, the inspectors returned. One flipped through his notes and looked up at me. Well, Mr. Ben, everything looks fine. Your land's zoned correctly for agricultural use. Animals are healthy and contained. No violations. Karen's face cracked. But what about the safety concerns? That goose attacked someone. I grinned. Captain Beeks, he's a good judge of character. Doesn't like trespassers. The inspectors exchanged a look, unimpressed. Ma'am, one of them said, farm animals on a farm is not a violation. Karen's face turned a bright, furious red. What about the noise? The smell? The second guy cut her off. Everything here is legal. Unless there's something else, we'll be leaving now. I had to bite my cheek to keep from laughing as she stood there sputtering, completely out of ammo. The inspectors gave me a quick nod, packed up, and drove off, leaving Karen standing in a cloud of dust and her own humiliation. She spun on me, fists clenched. You think this is over? She hissed. I leaned against the fence, gave her a calm smile. I was hoping it was. She stepped closer, eyes blazing. You embarrass me. You destroyed everything. Do you know how much that wedding cost? What I lost because of you? I raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. The HOA's turning on you. Her laugh was bitter and sharp. Of course they are. Bunch of cowards. The second things got messy, they left me twisting in the wind. I gave a small shrug. Maybe if you hadn't lied, stolen someone's land, and tried to spin it as community service, they wouldn't have. Her jaw locked so tight, I half expected to hear a tooth crack. You think you're untouchable, don't you? I sighed, already done with the conversation. Karen, go home. Karen didn't move. She just stood there, stiff as a board, then drew in a long breath, like she was trying to summon the last ounce of her pride. You're gonna regret this, she said, voice low and cold. I'll make sure you pay for what you did. That was it. My patience snapped. Karen, I said, keeping my voice calm but firm, the only reason you're not sitting in a jail cell right now is because I didn't press charges for trespassing and fraud. So if I were you, I'd walk away and hope I stay generous. For a split second, something flickered in her eyes. Panic maybe, or just the realization that the game was over. Then she spun on her heel, stomped to her car, and tore off down the road like a storm cloud on wheels. I let out a breath, running a hand through my hair. I knew Karen too well to think this was the last of it. She wasn't the take the loss and move on type. She'd dig her nails into whatever she had left until it all fell apart. My phone buzzed. It was a text from one of the HOA members. Emergency HOA meeting tonight. Karen's losing control. Figured you'd want to know. I smirked. Oh yeah, things were about to get interesting. That evening, I sat out on the porch with a cold drink in hand, watching the sun disappear behind the trees. The animals were quiet, settling in for the night, and the whole place had this calm, peaceful stillness to it. Total contrast to the circus that had blown through here over the past 48 hours. But I knew better than to think it was over. Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly. Still, from the sound of that message, her empire was cracking. And tonight's meeting? That might just be the end of it. I debated skipping it. I wasn't part of the HOA and had no real reason to be involved in their little internal collapse. But the idea of watching Karen squirm, watching her finally face the music, was too good to pass up. I stood, dusted off my jeans, and headed toward the clubhouse. By the time I arrived, the meeting was already underway. You could feel the tension before even stepping into the room. It was thick, heavy. The usual HOA setup was in place. Board members lined up in their seats, but something was different. No cheerful greetings, no fake politeness. Just stiff shoulders, whispered arguments, and simmering resentment. And there she was, Karen, sitting in the center like a dethroned queen, white-knuckling the armrests of her chair like they were the last things holding her together. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, and watched it all unfold. An older guy, bald head, sharp eyes, stood and cleared his throat. Let's get to the main issue. We all saw what happened at that wedding. We all know who's responsible. Karen straightened up and put on that same phony smile. Yes, and I believe we need to talk about the real issue. Ben's disregard for our community standards. His animals. He cut her off with a raised hand. Karen, he said flatly, we're not here to talk about Ben. We're here to talk about you. The room echoed with murmurs of agreement. Karen's jaw twitched, but she held her smile like it might still save her. I don't understand. I did what I thought was best for the community. A woman near the front scoffed. You stole money. You lied about the wedding venue. You almost got us all sued. That's not leadership, someone else said. That's reckless. Karen's voice rose slightly. I was thinking of the big picture. That wedding brought valuable connections. It brought embarrassment, a man snapped, and legal headaches. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. Watching her crumble was even better than I imagined. Then a quiet voice piped up. A man with glasses who hadn't spoken all night. There's been talk about a vote. Karen sat bolt upright. A vote? The bearded man nodded. To remove you as HOA president. For the first time that night, panic flashed across her face. No, you can't do that. I built this HOA. I've kept it alive for years. And in those years, the woman at the front said sharply, you fined people for nonsense, enforced ridiculous rules, and now you've cost us thousands of dollars because you let your ego take the wheel. Karen's hands gripped the table, knuckles white. Everything I did was for this community. A few bitter laughs scattered around the room. The bearded man sighed. Karen, we have the votes. Let's not drag this out. She shook her head furiously. You don't. You can't. The man with glasses calmly set a stack of papers on the table. We do. Karen's breath hitched. You can't do this. I won't step down. The bearded man didn't flinch. Karen, this isn't optional. The vote starts now. One by one, hands went up around the room. No hesitation, no mercy. Karen scanned the crowd, searching for loyal faces, but they were gone. Even the few who used to back her kept their arms folded, heads low. It was over. Her face drained of color as the truth set in. She had lost everything. Her power, her control, her precious little HOA throne. I figured that was my cue. Well, I said casually, stepping into the room. Looks like the community finally figured out what was best for everyone. Karen's eyes locked on me, burning with hatred. This is your fault, she spat. I tilted my head. Oh, did I tell you to take people's money under false pretenses? Did I host a wedding on private land without permission? Did I lie to every person in this room? Her mouth tightened into a hard line, but she had nothing left to say. A bearded man cleared his throat, flipping the final page in the vote packet. Effective immediately, he said, Karen Withers is removed from her position as HOA president. And just like that, it was done. Karen, you've got 5 days to step down, the bearded man said firmly. After that, we'll hold a vote for a new HOA president. Karen shot up so fast her chair screeched against the floor. Without saying a word, she stormed out of the room and slammed the door behind her, like a teenager grounded for the first time in her life. I let out a low whistle. Well, that was fun. The whole room seemed to exhale at once. People finally looked relaxed, like they could breathe again after years of holding it in. As I turned to head out, I heard the bearded man call after me. Ben! I stopped, glancing over my shoulder. Yeah? He gave me a small nod. Thanks for everything. I smirked. Don't thank me. Thank my cows. He chuckled. Fair enough. I stepped outside into the cool night air, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Karen was finally out. The HOA had pulled the thorn from its side, and for the first time in a long time, she was just a memory. A few days passed without incident. Then, one afternoon, I looked out toward the gate and spotted a familiar face. It was the bride from the wedding disaster, standing there with her hands clasped in front of her, looking sheepish. I walked over, arms crossed. Something I can do for you? She gave a nervous little laugh. Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. She glanced down, then back at me. I had no idea Karen lied about the venue. If I'd known, I swear I wouldn't have gone through with it. I looked her over for a beat, then gave a slow nod. Fair enough. And about the lawsuit, she added, wincing slightly. I raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, not coming my way? She shook her head. Nope. My dad's going after Karen instead. He's not thrilled. I chuckled. Can't say I blame him. She hesitated for a second, then reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. This is for you. I took it, opened it up, and saw a check inside. My brow lifted. It's for the cleanup, she said quickly. I know the wedding wrecked your land. It's the least I could do. I considered handing it back, but then I thought about the busted fencing, the ruined grass, and the frosting I was still finding near the barn. I nodded. Appreciate it. She offered a small, genuine smile. Take care, Ben. I watched her walk off, then looked down at the check again. It wouldn't erase the madness of the last few days, but it was something. A clean end to a messy chapter. Right then, Captain Beaks strutted by, honking like he'd just won a medal. I smirked. You and me both, buddy. I turned and headed back toward the house, wondering how long it'd be before the HOA tried something stupid again. Whatever it was, I'd be ready. If you liked this story, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And we are also happy to announce that we have created a playlist that contains all the best Karen HOA stories. You can see it on the screen now. Click to play it. I assure you, you will laugh like never before. Thank you for watching.